The Frankfurt deal had finally been sealed. After 6 exhausting days of back-to-back negotiations, I had managed to secure the European expansion that my boss had been chasing relentlessly for more than 2 years. Every bone in my body throbbed from the 9-hour flight, yet triumph surged through me like electricity as I directed the rental car toward my parents' quiet suburban home. My suitcase lay heavy in the trunk, a silent reminder of the road I had just traveled. I had promised Mom that I would stop by before returning to my apartment, fully aware that she would want every detail of my trip and would almost certainly insist on loading me with something homemade from her kitchen. The neighborhood glowed with amber shades from the setting sun as I turned onto Maple Street. Pulling into the driveway, I noticed that Dad had finally cut back the unruly bushes that had been swallowing the garage. Small victories, I thought. As my black pumps dug painfully into my heels, I smoothed down my charcoal pencil skirt, feeling the sting of travel fatigue. The long flight had left creases in my silk blouse. But even so, I still carried the aura of a senior financial analyst who had just secured a career-defining win. I smiled faintly as I reached into my purse and fished out the garage remote. My Challenger had been stored here while I traveled. It felt safer than leaving it parked on the crowded streets near my apartment complex. The familiar click, then the mechanical hum of the garage door rising filled my ears. But when the door lifted, all I saw was a yawning emptiness where my car should have been. No, no, no. The words stumbled out in disbelief as my stomach plunged. The garage stretched before me, barren except for Dad's old lawnmower and Mom's neatly stacked gardening supplies. My fingers lost all sensation, and the remote clattered to the concrete as I dropped my suitcase and rushed toward the house. This could not be happening. Not my car. Not my Challenger. My heart pounded as I pushed open the side door, stepping into the kitchen. They were all there, Mom, Dad, and my sister Kendra seated around the oak dining table, looking like they had rehearsed an intervention. The silence struck me first, then the waves of guilt radiating from them. Dad kept his eyes fixed on his calloused hands, spread flat against the tabletop. "Emily, honey," Mom began, her voice wrapped in that saccharine tone she used when delivering bad news. "Don't overreact. Where's my car?" My voice rasped, tight and raw. Kendra lifted her chin, her expression staged with the same confidence she wore in her endless makeup tutorials. "It's just temporary, Em. I'll pay it all back." "Pay what back?" My tone sharpened. "Where is my Challenger?" Mom's eyes darted toward Dad, but he refused to look at me. "We had to make a difficult choice, sweetheart," Mom murmured. "Kendra needed seed money for her business and we took it to Cornerstone Pond," Dad finally admitted, his voice gravelly. "Got $45,000 for it." The room tilted violently. "You did what with my car?" "It's only a loan against the car, not a permanent sale," Kendra rushed in. "Once my cosmetics line takes off, I'll pay it back with interest. You'll have your car back in no time." My mind spun back through years of endless nights bent over spreadsheets at Bridgewater Capital. 70-hour weeks for 6 relentless years. Sacrificed vacations. Turned down better apartments. Every choice carefully made while I scraped and saved. I thought of Grandpa's weathered hands guiding mine over the engine of his friend's Challenger when I was 9 years old. These machines aren't just transportation, Emily girl. Their dreams turned into steel. His eyes had twinkled with absolute certainty. "Someday you'll have one of your own. Just be patient." When I finally drove my Challenger home, tears had streaked down my face, not just for the gleaming black paint or the growl of the engine, but for what it symbolized. It was proof that every sacrifice had meant something. "My cosmetic startup is groundbreaking," Kendra was saying, tossing her hair like a commercial actress. "I don't care if you've bottled the fountain of youth." I cut her off sharply. "That car was never yours to take." Mom's lips pressed into a thin line. "Emily, family looks out for family. You earn plenty at your job. Kendra deserves a chance to succeed. So you used my spare key. My title. You went behind my back." The betrayal sank deeper with every word. You committed fraud. Dad flinched. Mom stiffened. We're your parents. We've always supported both our girls equally. A bitter laugh tore from my throat. Equally? That's what you call this? My phone buzzed in my pocket, and I glanced down at the notification. My insurance company alerting me to a lien placed against my vehicle. The fire inside me froze into ice. This wasn't only about money, nor just about a stolen dream car. This was about respect, something my family had consistently denied me. You have 30 days, I said, my voice steadier than my trembling hands. 30 days to get my car back, or I press charges, fraud, theft, all of it. All and charges? Mom gasped. Against your own family? Family doesn't steal from each other. I turned toward the door. 30 days. Their stunned faces blurred in my peripheral vision as I slammed the door hard enough to rattle the framed family photos. Smiling portraits that suddenly seemed like lies. Masking the reality that in this family, my dreams had always been treated as disposable. Now the pawn shop stank of desperation and cheap artificial air freshener. I straightened my blazer, trying to look like a woman in control rather than someone watching her life collapse piece by piece. In the reflection of a dusty display case, I caught the faint streaks of mascara I had failed to wash away that morning. Miss Martin, the pawnbroker named Gordon, according to the plastic tag pinned to his shirt, slid a stack of documents across the counter, with the weary detachment of someone accustomed to watching lives collapse day after day. His tone carried no judgment, only the practiced neutrality of routine devastation. Your vehicle was brought in 5 days ago. Loan amount, $45,000, plus our standard fees. I scanned the documents, my finance training instinctively clicking into gear, eyes darting to the numbers. $3,000 in fees? That's outrageous, borderline predatory. My voice sharpened. 3,000 on top of 45? That's robbery. Gordon's face didn't flinch, his expression as impassive as stone. Classic car market's unstable, he replied flatly. We assume risks. If the loan isn't paid back, after 35 days we auction it. His finger tapped a clause buried in the fine print. Full repayment required by October 3rd. Total, $48,000. My stomach twisted as I turned the page. And then I froze. There it was, my signature. Except, it wasn't mine. The forgery was convincing at a glance, but it lacked the subtle upward curve I always traced at the end of the final N. This was not my signature. Ma'am, if you're implying fraud, Gordon began, his mask cracking slightly. I'm not implying, I snapped, I'm stating. I pulled my driver's license from my wallet, then slipped out a freshly signed work contract. Compare them. His eyes flickered between the pages, discomfort surfacing on his face. I'll need to speak with my manager. Please do, I said evenly. And while you're at it, pull the security footage from the day this transaction was made. I was in Frankfurt, Germany. 20 minutes later, standing with the manager in his cramped office, the truth sank into me like wet cement. My parents had committed fraud. Not petty dishonesty, but criminal fraud, the kind of crime people went to prison for. We can file a police report immediately, the manager offered. The word police constricted my throat. I needed time, needed to breathe. Back at my apartment, I collapsed onto the couch without even taking off my coat. On the coffee table rested a family photo album I hadn't touched in years. With trembling fingers, I pulled it onto my lap and flipped through the plastic-sheathed pages. Kendra's Sweet 16 glared back at me. A lavish garden party with 40 guests, a professional photographer, and a cake taller than she was. I turned the page and found nothing marking my own 16th birthday. Because that day I had been folding shirts at my mall job, saving every dollar for college applications. Flip again, Kendra's high school graduation. complete with a limousine Dad had rented. Then my college graduation, immortalized only by empty chairs where my parents should have been. Their flight had been cancelled despite clear skies, yet the very next day they had no trouble attending Kendra's dance recital. Christmas of 2018 came next, Kendra beaming beside a red Volkswagen wrapped with a massive bow, while I clutched a discount store sweater, my strained smile failing to hide the truth. The pattern spanned years, milestones, every supposed celebration. Not hints of favoritism, but deliberate sacrifices, my sacrifices, to elevate Kendra. My phone rang suddenly, the sound cutting through the silence. Uncle Harvey's name lit up the screen. He didn't even say hello. "Your mother called me," he said briskly, tried to spin the story in their favor. My voice was heavy. "And what version did she give you? That you're overreacting, that family helps family?" His disgusted snort was loud in my ear. "This isn't help, it's theft, and you know it." I did know it. Tears pricked at my eyes. "I just never thought they'd go this far," he asked quietly. "So, what are you going to do?" I had no answer. After he hung up, Aunt Patricia called Dad's sister, forever the mediator. "They were just trying to give Kendra a chance," she pleaded. "Gerald feels awful, can't you find a little compassion?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. It was Jessica, a colleague from work, holding a plastic bag that smelled of basil and spice. "I brought dinner," she said, her eyes softening as they took in my swollen face. "You look terrible." I laughed hoarsely for the first time in days. "Thanks for the honesty." Over plates of steaming noodles, I poured the whole story out. Jessica's outrage crackled like fire, warming the icy pit inside me. "You know this is criminal, right?" she said, topping off my wine glass. "They stole your car." I nodded, voice shaking. If anyone else had done this, I'd have gone straight to the police. But this was my family. Jessica's reply was gentle but firm. "That makes it worse, Emily. Not better. Len dash Jessin, Vin dash 10, 10, Chen, 10, and 10. What does your boss think?" she asked. I sighed. "He said family wounds cut deeper than any other." I broke down in his office today, first time in 6 years at Bridgewater. He's giving me space. The next morning, I texted Kendra. "Coffee. Noon, the cafe near your apartment, just us." She was already waiting when I arrived, oversized sunglasses shielding her eyes despite the cloudy skies. The bubbly bravado she had flaunted in the kitchen was gone, replaced with a nervous stillness. I sat across from her. "Let me see the business plan," I said flatly. She blinked. "What?" "The business plan. Financial forecasts, marketing strategy, documents that any real startup would prepare before seeking funding." She fidgeted with her cup. "It's more creative than that. Fluid." I raised my hand. "Stop. Show me what you actually have." From her bag, she produced a flimsy mood board of makeup looks, a scribbled list of product names, and some amateur sketches of packaging. No supplier contracts. No detailed formulas. No financial modeling. I stared at the pitiful pile, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. "This is it? This is what you stole my car for?" My voice cut through the air like glass. "Plays now, does it?" Kendra's lips trembled as she whispered. "I just wanted one real chance to prove myself, the way you did. Everyone is always comparing me to you, how successful you are, how dependable, how I should be more like you." I steadied my breath, letting each word land heavy between us. "I earned my chance, Kendra. I didn't build it on taking away someone else's dream." Her shoulders collapsed, the defiance draining from her posture. "I thought once the business took off, I could pay you back with interest. Make everyone proud for once." She slid her sunglasses off, exposing eyes swollen from too many tears. "But now? The first shipment came in yesterday. Half the containers shattered in transit, customers are already blasting complaints online, and the formula isn't holding, it separates within hours. Her voice splintered. Everything's collapsing around me. My phone buzzed. A message from her sent only moments ago. I need more money to fix this. Just a little more. Please, Emily. I'm desperate. Her eyes tracked my reaction, pleading silently as I read. I flipped the phone face down on the table. Not a penny more, I said with finality. You either fix this, or we all lose together. Her face folded in on itself. I don't know how. For a dangerous heartbeat. I felt the old tug, the family's unspoken expectation that I would step in, tidy the chaos, shoulder the responsibility. But then my mind flashed back to my empty garage. The falsified signature. The betrayal. I stood. You'd better figure it out quickly. The clock is already ticking. L'Almanyu. 10 days after the night I discovered my garage stripped bare. Kendra's so-called business lay in smoking ruins. Each day brought a new collapse that pinged my phone like the ticking of a doomsday clock. On day 3, suppliers cut ties after bounced payments. By day 5, social media brimmed with refund demands and angry customers. On day 7, the bank froze her accounts, cutting off what little lifeline remained. By day 10, she had barricaded herself in her apartment, refusing calls from anyone. Meanwhile, I sat at my desk at Bridgewater Capital, the Frankfurt acquisition documents staring back in a blur I could no longer focus on. 6 months of meticulous work now dangled by a thread because my mind was trapped on the empty space where my challenger should have been. The desk phone jolted me back. Director Palmer's voice filled my ear. Emily, I need those final projections by 4. The edge in his tone carried not just authority but concern. You look worn out. Is everything okay at home? I forced a professional brightness into my voice. Everything's fine. You'll have those numbers within the hour. The words burned like acid. Nothing was fine. My family had betrayed me, my sister's vanity project was crumbling, and my career was now at risk because I couldn't keep the two worlds apart. By Sunday, I found myself pulling a rental car to the curb outside my parents' house, pointedly avoiding the driveway where my challenger had once belonged. It was a small act of rebellion, but it mattered. Inside, the familiar aroma of Mom's pot roast wrapped the kitchen in uneasy nostalgia. Dad hunched at the table, his posture heavy with invisible weight. Mom busied herself with the good china, the plates reserved for Christmas dinners or family crises. Kendra arrived last, her designer sunglasses failing to hide the puffiness around her eyes, her once confident stride reduced to something smaller, hesitant. Let's eat while it's hot, Mom murmured, serving Dad first as always. Silence cloaked the table, broken only by the scrape of forks against porcelain. I sliced my meat into precise squares, focusing on the grind of knife on plate to stop myself from shouting. Mom broke first. Kendra's having a hard time with her business, she said softly, patting her daughter's hand. Everyone stumbles sometimes. I set my fork down. This isn't about stumbling, it's about theft. Dad spoke then, his voice gravelly. We thought we were helping her. We wanted Kendra to have her chance. My reply came sharp, slicing through the room. At my expense. You didn't just take a car. You took everything it stood for. Kendra winced. Honey, it's just a vehicle, Mom began. My voice rose, steady but aching. It was 6 years of 70-hour weeks. It was vacations I never took, birthdays I missed, overtime I bled through. It was Grandpa's legacy, his promise that hard work pays off. That car was proof my sacrifices meant something. And you took it as if it were disposable. The doorbell cut through the tension. Relief flickered across Mom's face as Dad shuffled off, only to return with Uncle Harvey looming behind him, broad-shouldered and bristling with fury. What the hell were you thinking, Gerald? He barked without greeting. His eyes locked onto mine, unwavering. Emily called me. Mom stiffened, her voice sharp. This is a family matter, Harvey. Exactly why I'm here. He shot back, dropping heavily into the chair beside me. Because someone needs to speak for the member of this family you've been sacrificing for years. Dad's face flushed crimson. Now wait. No, you wait, Harvey snapped. I reached down for the briefcase I had placed at my side, the cool leather grounding me. My fingers found the folder I had prepared the night before. Carefully, deliberately, I laid it flat on the table. The weight of its contents pressed as heavily as the silence that followed. We need to talk about what happens next. My voice carried no hesitation as I placed 3 sets of printouts on the polished dining table. Vehicle title documents, excerpts from fraud statutes, pawnshop regulations, and even sentencing guidelines. The papers landed with the impact of grenades, their weight undeniable. This is a felony, I said, tapping the first page. I could have you both charged and sent to prison. Mom's face drained of color instantly. You wouldn't, she whispered, her voice cracking. I don't want to, I admitted, surprising myself with the honesty in the words. Despite the fury, despite the ache of betrayal, destroying them was not what I wanted. But you need to truly understand what you've done. Dad's eyes fixed on the documents, this time really seeing the words instead of glancing over them. His throat tightened. Prison time? He asked hoarsely. 2 to 5 years for title fraud, I replied in a steady, clinical tone. Plus, restitution. Mom collapsed into sobs, not the manipulative tears she often used to end fights, but raw, wrenching cries that shook her entire body. Dad reached for her hand, his own eyes brimming. What have we done to you, to us? For the first time since this nightmare began, I saw real remorse on his face, not just guilt for being caught, but deep recognition of the damage they had caused. Kendra tugged her sunglasses off, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. This is my fault, she whispered. I pushed them into it. I knew you'd never agree, Emily. I convinced them it was temporary. That once my business succeeded, you'd forgive me. I never thought everything would collapse this quickly. She stared down at her manicured nails, ashamed. Uncle Harvey leaned forward, breaking the silence. So what's the plan? That pawnshop isn't going to wait forever. 25 days, I said firmly. After that, they'll auction the car. Mom wiped her damp cheeks with trembling hands. What can we do? I pulled out a calculator, my fingers already moving. We figure out resources. For the next hour, the dining room turned into a strategy session. Dad suggested tapping into a home equity line of credit for $30,000, though it would take at least 2 weeks to process. Kendra promised to sell her BMW and drain her savings, which might produce $12,000. I committed $6,000 from my own emergency fund, though it cut deep. Uncle Harvey watched all this, frowning. I'll put in $5,000, he said finally, but only because Emily shouldn't bear this alone. The math was ruthless. Even combining it all, we'd need 15 days before we could raise the full amount, and the pawn shop demanded $15,000 up front to stall the auction. I'll call them first thing tomorrow, Dad said, his voice steadier than before. See if they'll extend the deadline if we pay part now. When I left their house, the weight on my chest hadn't gone, but something had shifted. Betrayal still burned, yet there was a fragile path forward, messy, uncertain, but visible. Back in my apartment, I sat at the edge of my bed, holding a framed photograph. My grandfather stood proudly beside a gleaming black Challenger, his arm wrapped around 12-year-old me. The summer sun glinted off the chrome bumper and danced in his eyes. Cars are only steel and paint, Emily girl, he had once told me. It's what they represent that matters. In the stillness of my apartment, the truth struck me like lightning. This battle was about more than a vehicle. It was about respect. It was about proving my sacrifices mattered as much as Kendra's aspirations. I picked up my phone and dialed. Dad answered on the first ring. I'll help, I said firmly. but nothing will ever be the same again. Silence stretched across the line, heavy with everything that couldn't be undone. Finally, Dad whispered, "I know. We'll make this right, Emily. I promise." I ended the call without goodbye. Promises offered too late carry little comfort. Action mattered more than words now. Tomorrow the fight to reclaim what was mine would begin, not just my car but my rightful place in this family. Across town, Kendra stood in a boutique, staring at her reflection as she fingered the silk of her beloved Hermes scarf. The collection once defined her pride, now spread across the counter for appraisal. The shop owner peered over her narrow glasses. "I can give 8,000 for all of it." Kendra swallowed hard. Those items had cost her more than 15,000, but pride couldn't compete with the looming deadline. "Done," she whispered, accepting the check with shaking hands. Meanwhile, Dad limped into his warehouse manager's office, his knees aching with arthritis. "Night shift?" the manager asked, brows raised. "Gerald, you haven't worked nights in 20 years. Dad lowered himself into the chair. "Just for a while. I need the differential pay." The manager studied him carefully. "This about the car situation your brother mentioned?" Dad's jaw tightened, but he nodded once. "Family business. Starting Monday," the manager said at last, sliding the paperwork across. "Hope it's worth it." At home, Mom wrapped Grandma's silver candlesticks in tissue paper, her hands unsteady. These heirlooms had survived the Depression and witnessed 5 decades of family celebrations. She placed them carefully into a box with the pearl necklace Dad had given her for their 25th anniversary. At Fletcher's pawn shop, the broker barely glanced at them before offering $3,000, just enough to cover the next week's interest. As for me, my own sacrifices came quietly in restless nights, skipped meals, and the constant gnaw of responsibility that refused to loosen its grip. The Frankfurt expansion devours nearly every waking hour, yet I push harder, taking on extra accounts and chasing the performance bonus that now feels like the line between redemption and complete collapse. On my desk sits the thin slip of paper from Cornerstone Pawn, a deposit receipt confirming that our initial $15,000 bought us a short reprieve. The auction has been delayed, but the victory feels hollow when paired with the newest letter from the bank, another delay in the HELOC approval pending yet another property inspection. At least it's movement. Jessica reminds me as we share lukewarm takeout in my cramped cubicle. Then she adds quietly, "Your sister called me." I look up from the endless spreadsheets, startled. "She called you?" Jessica nods. "Wanted to know if the financial group was hiring entry-level positions." I almost dropped my fork when she asked. A few days later, I spot Kendra in the mall food court, and for a moment I don't recognize her. Gone are the designer dresses and the oversized jewelry. Instead, she stands in plain black slacks and a crisp white shirt, shifting nervously near Nordstrom's employee entrance. Her first day at a real job. That night my phone rings, and when I answer, her voice sounds smaller, fragile. "I had no idea," she whispers. 8 hours on my feet, being ignored by strangers, treated like I'm invisible. And you've been doing 70-hour weeks for years. I lean against the kitchen counter, at a loss for words. "All those times I called you boring for canceling plans." She continues, "You weren't boring. You were responsible." 3 days later, we meet in the coffee shop halfway between our apartments. Kendra doesn't order her usual elaborate drink. Just a plain cup of coffee. Her makeup is minimal, her nails clipped short, bare of polish. "I was entitled. I was selfish." She blurts. No preamble, eyes fixed on mine. "I'm so sorry, Emily. Not just for the car. For everything." I wrap both hands around my mug, the warmth seeping into me. "Pretty words, Ken." "I know," she admits quickly, nodding. "But I'm trying to prove it now. Actions louder than words, right?" Meanwhile, at my parents' house, Dad spreads out bank statements across the kitchen table, the harsh overhead light making him look older than his years. He adds and re-adds columns, the numbers refusing to cooperate. Gerald. Mom calls from the study, holding a bundle of loan applications. Did you know about these? Hammer Hov Tommen, Haver, Tommen, Tommen, Tommen. Each page bears Kendra's looping script. Credit cards, personal loans, buy now pay later schemes, nearly $80,000 in total. Mom whispers. We had no idea. The next morning, they sit across from Mr. Winters at the credit union, the same advisor they've trusted for 2 decades. His tone is gentle, but the news is devastating. This HELOC will push your retirement back at least 5 years, assuming no other surprises. Mom stares down at her thin hands, her wedding ring loose around her finger. When I stop by later to drop off my share of the week's payment, Dad meets me on the porch. For once, Mom isn't hovering. His voice is ragged. We failed you, Emily. Long before we took your car. I sit beside him, the wooden step creaking beneath us. We spent years celebrating Kendra's dreams and dismissing yours. You never asked for much, so we assumed you didn't need much. The evening sky glows gold as silence stretches between us. Then at last, the HELOC is approved, but with a 3-day processing lag. Relief curdles into panic when Cornerstone Pawn calls. Another buyer has cash in hand, eager for the challenger. Dad pleads into the phone. Just 2 more days. The pawnbroker is unmoved. First money in gets the car. The next 36 hours dissolve into a blur of frantic calls and desperate math. Kendra empties what remains of her savings. Mom sells her anniversary diamond earrings. I max out my emergency credit line. Still $3,000 short. It's not enough, Mom whispers, hollow-eyed, as we gather around the kitchen table. The deadline looms, noon tomorrow, then the doorbell rings. Uncle Harvey stands on the porch, checkbook open. Family helps family, he says, echoing Mom's old phrase. But this time it carries weight instead of emptiness. The following morning we cram into the bank lobby, watching the digital clock tick closer to noon as the manager processes the wire transfer. Dad's hand trembles when he signs the final authorization. At 11:42, the screen flashes. Payment received. For the first time in weeks, we exhale. The morning sun glints against the chrome trim of my Challenger as I stand outside Cornerstone Pawn, gripping the receipt in my sweaty palm. After 30 days of endless fights, fractured trust, and sacrifices that carved pieces out of us, we've gathered the $48,000 to the last cent. My throat tightens as I push open the glass door. The same pawnbroker looks up, his eyebrows rising in recognition. Miss Martin, he says, sliding paperwork across. Here for your vehicle. I nod, unable to find words. My hand shakes as I sign line after line, the pen unsteady between my fingers. The cashier's check is counted twice before the broker returns my title and the keys. All settled, he says. But his voice is distant. The keys slip in my grasp. The cold metal heavy and strangely unfamiliar. Outside, I run my fingers along the glossy black paint, searching for dents, for evidence of rough handling. Sunlight explodes from the polished chrome. They detailed it yesterday, the broker offers. Policy before release. I don't answer. The moment should feel triumphant, but it doesn't. It feels hollow, emptied by betrayal. And as I stand there, my grandfather's voice drifts back to me, a reminder that cars are only metal, but the dreams they carry are far heavier. Cars are not simply pieces of metal and chrome. They are vessels for meaning, carrying years of sacrifice, pride, and personal history. What does this Challenger stand for now? It is no longer just the evidence of my hard work and the endless nights I gave up, but also the bitter truth that my family once viewed my dream as something disposable. When the engine roars to life with that deep, familiar growl, The vibration travels through the seat and into my bones, reminding me of everything I nearly lost. Tears blur my vision as I drive away from the pawn shop, each passing mile peeling away another layer of pent-up emotion. By the time I reach my apartment, my cheeks are drenched, mascara streaking down my skin in uneven rivers. But my car, my symbol of perseverance, is back where it belongs. 3 days later, my phone buzzes with a message from Mom. Sunday dinner, 5 in the evening. Dad's grilling steaks. The invitation lands heavy in my gut. For a moment I consider ignoring it, but my fingers type a short reply instead. I'll come. Some things can't be spoken through screens. When Sunday comes, the spring air feels impossibly clear, mocking the storm inside me. The Challenger's engine announces me long before I turn into their driveway. Dad freezes at the grill, spatula suspended in the air as he watches me park. Mom appears in the doorway, wringing a dish towel nervously in her hands. Dinner unfolds in a haze of strained silence, broken only by empty pleasantries passing potatoes, commenting on the weather. Kendra pushes her food around, eyes fixed on her plate. No one dares mention the heavy truth pressing on us all. At last, Dad clears his throat and places his fork down carefully, as if the gesture itself requires courage. Emily, he begins, his voice formal, almost foreign. From his pocket he withdraws a folded paper, hands trembling. I betrayed your trust. I violated your rights. I failed in my duty as your father to safeguard what mattered most to you. Each phrase sounds rehearsed, yet the sincerity in his eyes is unmistakable. Mom stretches across the table, tears spilling freely. Please forgive us, sweetheart. We were wrong, so terribly wrong. Kendra straightens in her chair, her voice quieter than usual but determined. I've been working at Macy's for 3 weeks now, she says, producing a small notebook. I've drawn up a budget plan to repay my share. It will take time, but every cent will be returned. 3 faces stare at me, taut with a mix of fear and fragile hope. Healing doesn't happen overnight. I say at last, folding my napkin carefully beside my plate. Trust takes time to rebuild. The relief that washes through the room is almost physical, though none of us dares smile. They know this is not forgiveness, it is only a beginning. 2 days later, I find myself across the desk from Rachel Holman, the attorney whose card has burned in my wallet for weeks. She peers at the documents through her glasses. You have a strong case for criminal charges. Title fraud, identity theft. Your parents could face serious consequences. My eyes wander to the family photo on her desk. 3 generations smiling in matching sweaters. And my throat tightens. What else can I do? I ask quietly. Rachel leans back in her chair. You could pursue a legally binding repayment agreement. That way, you get justice without pressing criminal charges. The following Sunday, we gather once again around the dining room table. Uncle Harvey sits at my side, his hands steady and protective as my parents and Kendra lean forward to sign the contracts. Monthly installments over 2 years, I explain, my voice firm. With interest. Dad's signature wavers, but when he lifts his eyes to mine, he doesn't look away. We'll honor this, Emily. Every last term. The shift in power is undeniable. For the first time, my boundaries are not brushed aside or diminished. They are written, signed, and protected. Later, as Harvey walks me to my car, I admit, I never wanted authority over them. He squeezes my shoulder gently. Sometimes respect has to be enforced before it can grow naturally. A month later, during the family reunion, the reckoning spills into public view. Aunt Patricia corners me near the potato salad, wine glass sloshing. Everyone stumbles, dear, you've made your point, time to let it go. Harvey appears at my side like a shield. No minimizing, he says firmly. They need to carry what they've done. The backyard falls into silence as Kendra steps forward, her voice trembling yet steady. I manipulated my parents, she confesses, her shoulders squared. I played on their favoritism, but in the end, they chose to betray Emily. We are all accountable. Aunt Patricia's mouth opens, then closes again, words dying on her tongue. Cousin Mike gives me a slow, deliberate nod. In that instant, something cracks in the family dynamic, truth finally cutting through years of avoidance and excuses. Cousin Mike gives me a solemn nod. The kind of quiet acknowledgement that carries more weight than words. In that moment, something subtle but profound shifts within the family dynamic, as though truth has finally sliced through decades of excuses and patterns of indulgence. Later that same week, I changed the garage door code at my parents' house. None of us miss the symbolism when I install a new security system on the Challenger, the small black box blinking steadily beneath the dashboard, a silent declaration that the boundaries are now mine to set. Will you leave us a spare key? Mom asks gently as I prepare to leave, her voice hesitant. Just in case of an emergency? I meet her gaze, and hold it long enough for the meaning to sink in. No, I say softly but firmly. I won't. Her lips press into a thin line, and she nods in acceptance. Nothing more is required. Some lines do not need explanations, they are drawn clearly in the silence between words. The mountain road stretches ahead of me, each curve unfolding like an open hand. I shift gears, feeling the Challenger answer with a deep rumble that courses from the steering wheel into my very bones. The Colorado Rockies rise majestically around me, painted in shades of golden light from the morning sun. It has been 1 full year since I almost lost this car, and every moment behind the wheel still feels like coming home. You were right, Grandpa, I whisper, patting the dashboard with reverence. The black paint gleams as sunlight dances across its polished surface, every shimmer a reminder of the battle I fought to reclaim it. With the windows rolled down, the mountain air rushes through my hair, carrying away the last traces of betrayal that once shadowed this dream. My shoulders no longer tense toward my ears. The persistent knot that lived between my shoulder blades for months has finally loosened and dissolved. My thoughts wander back to last week's dinner at my parents' house. Before I left, Dad had led me to the garage, unveiling the small addition he had built with his own hands. It was a secure, locked space with its own alarm system. Your car is safe here now, he said, his voice rough with unspoken emotion. Only you know the code. Meanwhile, Mom has begun to ask before touching even the smallest things. Would you mind if I borrow your jacket? She asked recently. Each question is a quiet victory, proof that she finally sees my belongings as mine alone. Kendra now sends me $300 each month, not much against the full debt. But the reliability speaks louder than the figure itself. Her apartment is small, her wardrobe modest, yet her pride shines through when she shows me her carefully made budget spreadsheet. I'm learning what you always knew, she admitted once. Earning something feels so different than having it handed to you. A sharp bend appears in the road ahead, and I ease off the gas before pressing down again, letting the engine sing as the tires hug the curve. Just last weekend, Uncle Harvey rode along with me, his weathered hand resting appreciatively on the dashboard. Your grandfather would be proud, he told me. Not just of the car, but of the woman you've grown into. I pull into a mountain overlook and shut off the engine, letting silence fill the space. Below me, the valley stretches endlessly, trees spilling across hills toward faraway peaks. I think back to the day I laid fresh flowers on Grandpa's grave, leaning a framed photo of me with the Challenger against his headstone. I understand now, I whispered then. Some dreams cost far more than money. Tomorrow I will return to the finance class where I volunteer, a room of 20 young women eager to learn lessons I had to discover the hard way: how to safeguard what matters, how to build boundaries, and how to recognize when generosity turns into self-erasure. Just last month, a teenager named Melissa lingered after class, her eyes fixed on the Challenger. My dad used to work on cars, she told me shyly. Before the divorce, My mom sold all his tools to pay for my sister's lessons. I invited her to sit behind the wheel, watching her face light up with possibility. Dreams deserve protection, I told her, echoing Grandpa's wisdom with my own added truth. And so do you. The sun warms my face as I restart the engine. The road ahead curves into possibility, free of guilt and heavy expectation. Boundaries may have cost me the illusion of a perfectly harmonious family, but in exchange, they've given me something far greater: relationships rooted in authenticity and respect. I press down on the accelerator, windows open wide, the future stretching before me like the perfect expanse of open highway. For the first time since I was 9 years old, watching Grandpa's steady hands guide mine over the body of an old car, I am not just clinging to my dream, I am finally living it fully.